We're talking about sets.
Yeah, and they're safe, and you practice them with your friends.
Or strangers.
Welcome back, Button Club members, to an episode of the Safe Sets podcast. I am one of your hosts, Shadow Fury, and with me, as always, is
Ricky Icebeam.
Today's topic, we are going to be talking about the importance of going to your local, what to expect, and how you should act when going to the local for your first time. You want to start us off with what you experienced with going to your first local?
Sure. So I started going to my locals in, I think, either 2014 or 2015. It was the end of Street Fighter 4, so it was Ultra Street Fighter 4. And everyone was really excited for Street Fighter 5 that was, going to be coming out soon. And I had been a fighting game fan and a casual player for years. I had started, playing Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo as a little kid. And so this was like finally my chance to be like, okay, I'm actually going to take it seriously. I'm actually going to practice. And so when I went to my first local, I'm from Rhode Island. And so my first local was Havenshine. And Havenshine is still going. They've been running weeklies. I started going in 2014 and they'd started before then. So maybe like 2012 or so, if I had to guess. Oh my
God. So 10, 12 years of running a local. That's amazing.
Yeah. And so when I first went, I also was not as good at fighting games as I am now. And that's in large part to going to locals. God, I've been going to locals for 10 years. I said the math in my head. If my memory's correct and 2014 is correct, it might've been 2015. But either way, 9-10 years of consistently going to locals. And so when I went, it was Ultra Street Fighter 4. I was not as good as I am now. And I was playing Guile. And I was playing Guile because I think Daigo played Guile in like 2013.
Oh, really?
And I was so impressed. I was like, I'm going to play Guile now. Whatever Daigo does is right. I want to be just like Daigo.
Nice.
So I was playing Guile and I was not very good. And I'm trying to remember. I got there super early because the other thing too is I was super nervous. I thought I was going to go and get my butt kicked. I had my heart was beating like I was going to EVA. I was so nervous. And I didn't know what to expect. And so I got there super early, like before almost anyone else was there. So it was myself, the guy who runs the place, Ron, and then X was there. And X was kind of like Ron's assistant at the time. Lord Xavier.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. I thought that's what you were what you're saying.
Yeah. So they were both there. Like they got there like super early to set up and everything else. And by the way, this local was in the basement of a Chinese food restaurant. Shout outs to Super Dragon.
Dark times.
Yeah, literally in a dark, dirty basement. So many stories about Super Dragon, but it was funny because like you'd walk into the front door of the Chinese food restaurant with like your backpack on with your fight stick in it. And the ladies who ran the Chinese food restaurant after a while like figured out like, oh, if you have like a GameCube controller in your hand or you're wearing a backpack, you're going down to the basement to play fighting games. So like we would like say hi, but like not explain what we were doing, just like say hi and then walk into the basement.
Yeah.
So you'd walk through like a Chinese food dining room and then like go around the corner and like down into this dirty, not that dirty, but this dark, dingy is the right word.
Yeah, it's a basement, right?
It's a basement. And so the basement actually had like the booths like the dining room would have.
Okay.
They had like extra booths and tables in the basement.
Yeah.
So we must have had maybe like 10 booths down there. And so Ron and X were setting up and I was just talking to them about fighting games and all this stuff. And it was like an hour and a half before anybody showed up. Anybody else besides the three of us showed up.
Oh, wow.
And so I sat there and I was playing with X and X wasn't that big into Street Fighter. He was more into like 3D games.
Mm-hmm.
And he plays some 2D games as well. And so him and I just played, I think it was Blaze Blue.
Okay.
I forget which one it was back then, but it was an older version of Blaze Blue.
Yeah.
This was 10 years ago. And it was just like a pretty simple 2D fighter, actually pretty similar to Street Fighter. So I was like actually taking games off him or going back and forth.
Nice.
And then after that, Ron like pulled me aside and was telling me like how impressed he was because X was like the best fighting game player he'd ever known. And like,
wow,
like people usually don't take games off him. So like if I'm able to take any games off him at all, even if it's like, 2 out of 10 games, that's like, I should be
it's a big
proud.
deal. Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool.
So that kind of boosted my confidence a little bit. And then, more people showed up. We started playing casuals, with Street Fighter 4. And in casuals, at locals, oftentimes you'll find players who are like brand new and, they don't even know all the mechanics of the games, or like they can't do combos. And you'll have other players who are like, you'd think they're Punk or Daigo, like they're pros, like they're so much better than you.
Like this guy.
It happens. And so I was noticing that for the first time, which was like, oh, like I fought this guy and I won like 10 games straight. It was easy. And I fought this other guy and I couldn't even win a round. And I was kind of disparaged about that. But that's just the truth of it. At locals, they come in all the skill levels are represented depending on how big the local is and all of that. So played locals for maybe like 2 or 3 hours. And by the way, this was on a Sunday. So we had all day to play.
Oh, that's awesome.
So when I said I showed up early, I think it was like 11 o'clock or noon. It was like super early. So we're playing casuals for a couple hours. I don't think they started the tournament till like maybe 5 p.m.
Oh my God.
If my memory serves correct. So I think the tournament started at like 5 and it was going to end around like 8 or 9. Probably get home by like 10-ish or something like that. So the tournament's starting and they didn't seed it because I don't know if it was because there wasn't enough players to seed. And again, this was a long time ago. I think there might have been like 8 or 10 of us in the Street Fighter tournament. And it was $5 to enter. Pretty standard, especially for back then. And so I'm trying to remember now. So I think my first match was against an El Fuerte player.
Oh, okay.
Who, looking back, probably wasn't that good at Street Fighter, but he could do like El Fuerte stuff.
Yeah, the gimmicks, right?
Yeah, so he just 2-0'd me so quick. And so I went down to loser's bracket. And then I think I won a match or two. And then I was in a match against a player who was like really close to my skill level. And so I think I won game 1. And then he went to character select to switch characters. And I also switched characters. And he had to like stop me and be like, oh, you can't do that, by the way. That's against the rules.
Yep.
So I think you might be able to do it in Smash. I'm not too familiar. But in most fighting game tournaments, the loser of a set can switch characters, but the winner has to stick with their character. And that's actually a pretty big deal, especially if you lose game 1 and then decide to switch characters. And if it's a first to 2, you're then locked into whatever that new character is until it's over. You can't keep switching back and forth. So realizing I couldn't switch characters, I ended up winning that set against that player. It was really, really close.
You remember who they were?
Not off the top of my head. I'm sure if I thought real long and hard about it, I could like remember a gamer tag or something. But a player who I haven't seen in years. I think he moved away from Rhode Island, so he's not around the area anymore. And I think I ended up coming in 3rd overall out of like 8 or 10 players, which is pretty good.
It's
and also the other thing I was saying earlier that I was very nervous getting there. I was nervous the whole time. I was nervous playing casuals with X. I was nervous playing casuals with the players. I was like shaking in bracket. And after I had won that set against the player that was like as good as me, I was like visibly shaking. I was so nervous.
Jeez.
And I was so like happy and excited that I had won. And Ron kind of pulled me to the side. He's like, are you doing all right? Like you're super nervous. I was like, I've never done this before. Like I've never been to a tournament. Like I've never played Street Fighter, like besides, online with randoms or with like 1 or 2 of my friends who are like very casual and like don't really know what they're doing. So I was just like super nervous. But yeah, coming in 3rd was, I think, good for me because looking back, I think if I had went 0-2, I probably would have come back. But I think if I like went 0-2 like multiple times in a row and I was so new to fighting games, I think I would have had a real like something to go through where I was like, is this really for me? Is this really my hobby or is this not for me? And I should pick something else. So I think, and also I think coming in first would have been bad for my ego.
Set yourself up way too high.
Right, I'm the best at Street Fighter. I should have been going to tournaments this whole time, and nobody can beat me.
And then you get humbled later on, right?
Oh yeah, because there's, like I was saying, there's players of all skill levels at locals, and every so often someone shows up who's like good enough to win a major. So I think coming in 3rd was actually pretty good for me because one, it showed me that like, oh, like I don't actually suck at fighting games. I actually know what I'm doing, but I have a long way to go. And that being said, I think that's one of my favorite things about going to locals is you'll go and you'll get a certain result, whether it's 0-2, 1-2, first place, whatever happens. But you come back the next week, or if it's bi-weekly or monthly, whatever it is, but you come back and you see a lot of the same faces. And so if there's like a combo you dropped, you get to try it again. If there's a player you lost to, you get to have the run back. If there's a character matchup that you got caught that you really didn't understand, if you did your homework and you come back the next week, you might lose again, but at least you understood some more things. You did something a little bit different. And I think that learning process with locals is something that isn't replicated online, especially not in ranked. And I think for the long-term growth or like your long-term skill improvement, I think it's like the healthiest way to measure your skill, way much more so than your online rank, especially in Street Fighter 6. If you play ranked regularly and you're hard stuck at platinum, I would say like that doesn't mean your skill level is platinum. That just means the players that you're fighting in the platinum rank are not teaching you the things that you need to know
to progress. Yeah.
And so, for example, like if you're hard stuck at plat, but you go to your locals and your locals have diamond players and master players and players who are technically also master, but like much higher level than someone who just got to master.
Yeah.
Like those players are going to like let you know what mistakes you're making, what things you should be doing differently, telling you things like knowledge checks that you didn't even know you didn't know.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing too. Like if you're playing with players either online or your friends or whoever they are, but if they're not particularly good, it's hard to learn what's right and wrong. And so a good example of this would be like in Street Fighter 6, Chun-Li's crouch heavy kick is -7 on block. And that means most characters can't sweep her back. And so against a good Chun-Li player, if you block their sweep and you sweep them back, they'll either block or perfect parry your crouch heavy kick and then punish you back. But what if the person you're playing against who's using Chun-Li doesn't block the sweep ever? So every time you block their sweep, you sweep them back and they get hit. You're being trained to think that's the correct answer for that scenario.
Yeah.
And it's actually wrong. Or let's say they sweep you every time and every time they sweep you, you block it. You sweep them back, they block it, but then they don't punish you. So then you're being trained to be like, oh, if they sweep me and I sweep them back, nothing bad's gonna happen. And then you go to your local or you fight someone who's much stronger, and you block their sweep, you go to sweep them back, and they block it and they full punish and they drive rush and they level 3 you and they hit you with like 60% and you're dead.
You're like, how did that happen? What's going on?
Exactly. And you don't even necessarily know, like, and because the combo was so long and like so much just happened and like you're emotional, like this terrible thing has just happened. I'm sure you're not pinpointing, oh, I shouldn't have swept there. And it's the stronger players who will punish you enough to force you to realize it, or will actually go out of their way to be like, oh, by the way, when I sweep you with Chun-Li, you actually can't sweep me back. That's not real.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff when I find players who are like hard stuck in platinum, or they're like diamond 1. Like that's the kind of stuff that you need to know to progress and get to diamond 2, eventually master rank. And those are the kind of things that I love learning at my locals.
I think that there was so much that you said that just reminded me of like different points for myself also.
So now you should talk for 20 minutes.
20 minutes? Oh my God. My first time going to local, and we talked a little bit about it in our very first Safe Sets podcast. So, to help you guys kind of get to know us and how we got here. But it was through Ricky and, meeting him on Facebook, fangirling, and then finding out about Platinum City Gaming. So that was my first time going to a local.
Do you mind just rewinding 1 second and just kind of explaining, like, you were a fighting game player interested in finding a local, and then how was it that you found me to contact?
So I had been looking for outside tournaments, and during the end of MKX, I found a spot in like Rhode Island that I'd gone to like a couple of times, but there was like literally no one there. It was like me, the guy running it, maybe one other person or something,
Yeah, not enough to even run a tournament.
Yeah, basically not even really enough to do anything. It was more like a casual hangout session. So when through searching through all these things through Facebook and Google and stuff, you came recommended as maybe a mutual friend or something, right? Because you mentioned that you live in Rhode Island, but you used to live in New Bedford.
Yes, so I was born and raised in New Bedford, which is in Massachusetts.
Yeah. So, and I think that might. When did you move to Rhode Island?
Let me think back. I moved to Rhode Island. It must have been about 10 years ago, maybe 20. No, it was. No, wait. So I think I moved November 2014. So I must have gone to my first local 2015.
Okay.
Because it was in Rhode Island.
All right. So I didn't realize it was that long ago. Because I'm pretty sure you came recommended to me because you had, or maybe because you went to New Bedford High.
I went to New Bedford Voc.
New Bedford Voc. Oh, same. Okay, yeah, word. So maybe that's why you came up was New Bedford Voc and all that. And we're pretty close in age too. So I had never been to Platinum City, but I saw that it was a thing. And then when you came recommended as, people you may know, and I saw all over that you were into Street Fighter. And mind you, like Street Fighter 5 is my first hardcore attempt into getting into fighting games beyond the casual level, which is obvious because I'm stepping out of my comfort zone and going out to a weekly. So I message you through instant messenger, and Alicia's always like, yeah, just message him. How much could it hurt? And I was basically like, oh my god, you live in New Bedford, you love Street Fighter, I love Street Fighter, we need to hang out sometime, And yeah, you told me about Platinum City Gaming, so at one point I ended up just meeting you up there. I, on the contrary to your story, was not nervous at all.
Oh, interesting.
If I don't get nervous because of the social situation. I'm friendly, approachable. I like to talk to people. So that was never an issue of like, will I be accepted or this and that? But nervous more so at my skill level. Like,
like for the tournament itself.
Yeah. How smoked am I going to get? How humbled will I be by the time I leave this? Or how, pleasantly surprised will I be that I'm actually off to a good start? I don't remember how well I did. And I want to say like one of the first times I went there was around Robin Turner, because it wasn't like that many players, maybe like 5 or 6 people or something.
Okay. And this was at the old PCG or the new one?
The old one. Okay, yeah,
nice.
Yeah.
The better PCG.
yeah. It was right next to the fire station. It was a small like storefront.
It felt like an office.
It kind of did actually. Yeah, it really kind of did. And Alicia and I will always remember the sink being outside of the bathroom door.
Was it?
You'd go and use the bathroom, and I'm a tattoo artist full time, so hygiene means a lot to me. So to not be able to wash your hands before touching a door, and then
everyone else also could not wash their hands.
Exactly. So that that was a bit of an ick for me, but I just tried to talk to everybody, and I was very open about, hey, I'm new to this. This is all very new to me. So. And I was never, and to this day, I'm never afraid to ask for constructive criticism.
Yeah.
There's some players that might not want to give that information unsolicited.
Which I would actually say is pretty wise.
Because you don't want to come off as pompous if you just beating someone and be like, oh, you really should be doing this and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and I've over the years, I've actually learned that the hard way. Like, I'm always like trying to be helpful and like, I'm so friendly. And so in the past, there was a time, especially when I really wasn't that good at fighting games, where I would play someone in a set and let's just say I beat them, 10-4 or something like that. And then I would give them advice right after. And I've had people like get pissed at me.
Yeah.
And at the time I was like, I'm just trying to help. But like over the years, I've kind of learned like, oh, like they might not appreciate it at the moment.
Yeah.
It's not what you, what is the saying? Like, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Yeah.
And so in fighting games, it's not what you say, it's when you say it.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
So if you say it 30 seconds after you just beat them in a set and they're salty, it doesn't matter how useful you are or how friendly you're being, they're pissed. And so, yeah, I've gotten to the point where I pretty much won't give advice unless you ask. But if you give me even a hint that you're interested in advice, I'll talk to you for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll talk your ear off.
Post Button Club weeklies, we all get around and start talking theory and stuff. But yeah, I feel like that's the only way you get good at anything is to get the critique back from someone, especially, like I said, being a full-time tattoo artist. I had no problem asking for critiques. That's how I even got to where I'm at. I got to live in Long Island for a year because I asked for help, basically.
With the tattooing, you're saying?
With tattooing, yeah. So I think that that's a good mentality to have, is to ask questions. And if you've told me a bunch of information and I don't understand it, I'm not just going to go, well, I don't know what he said, and I don't want to look even dumber than I feel like I do right now. No, I ask right away, I'm sorry, I don't really understand what you're saying. Can you go over it with me? And even if you don't get all the information in that moment, it's just important to ask. There's been times where a bit of information sat in my brain for a month, 2 months, however amount of time, until one day it clicked. Oh, that's what they meant by that. Oh, okay. So I just think it's so important to go in there humble and just be friendly and open. I would say there's, like any community, there is interesting people everywhere, and you might actually end up just getting along with people that you would never think that you would be in the same like social situation with. So that's the biggest thing I can recommend is, go in there with an open mind and get that constructive criticism. I don't remember how well I did or didn't do during the tournament.
But the important thing was it fun?
It was fun. It was great to see other players that loved Street Fighter and loved fighting games. I didn't find out about the fighting game community until like 2012, 2013. On a YouTube search for Mortal Kombat 9 Cyrax combos, and saw the FGC. And I, as a quick tangent on the side, growing up playing Street Fighter 2, loved Street Fighter 2 Super Nintendo at the house, right? I had moved to Dartmouth in the 3rd grade. My last name is Vidinia, and it gets picked on a lot in this new school, and I'm sure you can imagine why. And it was therapeutic and cathartic to play Street Fighter and imagine I was beating these people that were picking on me, but not just like they were there. It was like in the auditorium.
Oh yeah, like on the big screen monitor.
Yeah, so that like really helped me get through. And I had this vision that fighting games could be competitive and seen in a large scale. So when you're talking all these years later to see that is a real thing, I felt like I had almost predicted it and needed to be a part of it. I forgot my original point now. That's the side story. Oh, I'm sorry. So to see so many other people that loved fighting games and were that good at it locally, that also blew my mind. And that's how I met KO the Poet, you, Lucky D. I'm pretty sure even Mike V was going there. And who's the kid that he would go there with that played Birdie?
Oh, Cammy Crisp.
Cammy Crisp, yes. So that's how I met like a lot of people initially. Even Kevin Tech was there and stuff like that. So, there was a while with going out to those, and you're losing every week. I was not as fortunate as Ricky. I went 0-2.
I was not fortunate.
Forever, okay? I'm not even sure. I got to be honest, I'm not even sure if I ever won a set in Street Fighter V the entire time, even when PCG moved to the other location.
I don't believe that.
You don't believe that?
Not at all.
I don't even think so. I really don't. I think the closest matches I ever had was with Mike V, and even then I don't think I could clutch anything out. But maybe I'm just, thinking about it negatively. And there were times where I was like, do I really want to go tonight? There's a they're having a tournament. Do I really want to drive the half hour there and back, the money, just to get humiliated, go 0-2, and then go back home frustrated? That's like a big question to ask yourself, and a low point when you're trying to go out to these.
Yeah, and in reality, it's really not humiliating. It's all in your head. Like, no one else is thinking poorly of you. Like everyone who's there has lost before. Even the person who's winning first place, like they've lost before. Like they've been upset before. And more often than not, the players who are really good at fighting games, when they started, were not good at fighting games, and they went 0-2, or they lost to someone that they feel like they shouldn't have lost to. And at least in my mind, it's that feeling you get when you've lost, that feels so bad that you're like, I never want to feel this again. And there's only 2 ways to not feel it again. You either quit or you practice.
And I wasn't gonna quit. because it was fun. It was so cool. We had already invested like money and time, and I was enjoying myself. And like anything, like I wasn't always good at BMX growing up as a teenager, and then got better because I was hanging out with crews and people. Same thing with tattooing. You know, I wasn't great starting out of the house or even my first job, but it took the time working with people and looking up to certain artists that you grow and get better. So I knew that it was eventual that I would be better next week than I was the previous week. And those are the things that keep you coming back, you know?
Yeah, and the thing that you find, like I was saying, like a lot of the stronger players and the players who are getting top 3 pretty regularly at your locals, if you ask them, I'll more often than not, they're like, oh yeah, I've been going to locals for like 4+ years. Like, and in their first year or two, they weren't winning.
Yeah.
And so 2 things happens. Like the players who've been going like year after year and practicing consistently, it's like they're learning things that you're not ready to learn yet.
Yeah,
it's like they've been where you are and they're further along in their journey. So like in a way they're essentially playing a different game than you, or like the things that they're focusing on is different from you. Like you might be focusing on not dropping your combo. They're at a point where they're pretty confident they're not going to drop their combo. They're worried about something that you're not thinking about yet.
Is so obscure at that lower level, you know? Like,
right, or not important, because if you drop your combo, who cares who's plus in the corner?
Yeah. You know, or even like a thing of practicing your whiff punishing. That was never on my scope. Probably throughout the entirety of Street Fighter V, I can be honest with you.
Right.
It was the combos and how much damage and the guessing situation, and that our stories show I think either side of someone's experience, and that's the same thing going in with that. And like you were saying before, someone else, the way you feel about your loss feels like the worst, and you think people think you suck, and you place your importance on the scene or in the community as how good of a player you are. And you're the only person that's feeling that way, because there's people that are just happy to have you there also. And they, hey, you having fun? You went 0-2? Better luck next time, And then when it's the other good players, you never saw that struggle.
Or yeah, you haven't seen it in so many years, or you weren't there when they were going through it 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, so you kind of just think like, well, they must have picked up this game and just been godlike, and what have I been missing out on? Like, there's just so many different ways to dissect that, I feel like.
Yeah, and so for players who have known me for a while,
which is a lot of players.
I'm well known.
Popular guy.
Well, that happens when you go to locals for 10 years.
Yeah.
There's definitely been times, particularly in the earlier days, I would say like up through like right, basically up until COVID. Like that was when I was struggling the most in fighting games, and probably like getting better the fastest at fighting games, and really leveling up to the point where like there were players that I used to lose to that I was now better than. And then players who were so much better than me that I thought I would never be able to beat them, and I was like getting to their level. And when you put in that much time and effort and you actually are like competent at what you're doing, the losses feel even worse. And there were days, and I don't know who saw me or who remembers this, but there was definitely days at the old PCG, and even more so when I started going to Balance Patch in Boston when that was new, where I would lose, either 0-2 or 1-2, or it didn't even matter. I could have gotten second place, and I was so upset. I would have to leave the venue and go for a walk.
Yeah.
And like, I was almost in tears. Like I wanted to cry. I was so upset. I was so disappointed in myself, feeling like all the time and effort I've put in was wasted.
Yeah.
And that, I should quit. This isn't for me. Like the negative feelings were winning.
Yeah.
And there was definitely times at Balance Patch in particular, because Balance Patch in Boston has a very high skill level.
Oh yeah, the highest locally, I'd say.
And so I felt like when I started going to Balance Patch for the weeklies for Street Fighter V, I was definitely going from being a big fish in a small pond to the big pond. And so there was lots of times I just went 0-2 when I really felt like I could have made top 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
And there were times like I would have to just go outside, and like I would sit on the side of the building, and I would definitely have like other players either like going out for a cigarette or just doing whatever, and like come back like, hey man, are you all right?
You good?
And I'm like, no man, I'm not all right.
Yeah, no, it's true. They say your losses feel at least twice as bad as as good as your wins feel, basically, right? Like,
yeah, and I would argue that number's not high enough.
That's not even high enough.
It's like 10x.
because you expect to win, right? Or you hope to win. So when you win, you're like, oh, I was right. No big deal, right?
Right.
But to lose, you're like, oh, I'm gutted. I can't believe I lost. I'm already in loser's bracket. Or, there's those mental games. There's times, and I'll be honest with you, you see there's a lot of shit in this apartment, a lot of things, a lot of collectibles. And I'll be talking to Alicia, or we have a rough night at Button Club. I'm like, I should just sell all this crap. I don't even deserve to own it. I'm gonna take an axe to all these things. Like, I am so trash right now. Even this past Monday, you had some casuals with my brother, and I think that sent him on a bit of a spiral, which has happened to me too. You play Ricky before a tournament, you might feel like you're hot stuff, and then you have some casuals, and then you're like, what am I even doing here? And it's rattled me before in tournament. I think it also rattled him. He was able to make like a mental comeback once I felt like he started doing good.
Oh, like he was fighting other people, beating them, like, okay, I don't suck.
Yeah. And then losing to me, that
and that was such a close set.
It was so close.
It really could have gone either way.
It really could have. It was we played pretty solid for the most part, and then got scrambly towards the end because we're just trying our best to beat each other. And I do, go back and watch that clip. You can just see how mad he is, how stoked I am that I took it. But that really does wear on you, and to the point where he was like, I'm so sick of coming in fourth place. I all I do is think about this game. I watch videos and I do all this tech. I'm like, Kevin, you have no idea how fortunate you are to be playing this game for this little bit of time. And
he's new.
He's new. He's brand new. He's new to Street Fighter because of 6. And like, you have no idea how lucky you are to even be getting fourth place. You didn't go through what I went to and other players, where you just go 0-2 forever until things start clicking, or it's a new game, or whatever. Like, you're taking for granted how far you've actually come in a short amount of time, which is debatable whether that's better or not, right? Like, I worked hard to go through 0-2 to feel like now I'm getting better, and I'm hitting those milestones that I really want to hit. That feels great.
And it feels well deserved because you went through that struggle.
Exactly. Rather than being like, well, I showed up, and I think even his first week he was top 8 or something, and I got his picture of third place up over there and stuff. Like, that happened really, really fast for him. Right. So I also wonder if that hurts him in a way, to be like, man, I did so good. I've gotten third place before. Why haven't I gotten that again? Kind of like what you're saying about hitting first and all that.
Right, exactly. I think, what I was saying before is, like, at my first local, I got like third place out of like 8 players. And like, that was a pretty good result at the time, but it wasn't so good that I had this boosted ego. And I wasn't making and I ended up going every single week, and I was not consistently making top 3. It was going between 0-2 and like third place at best. It took me a while to win. And then oftentimes when I did win, it was just like, oh, the 2 players I lost to last week didn't show up this week.
Yeah. So you have that, and those are things like imposter syndrome that pop into your head, where you're like, oh, well, I did so well this week, but so and so wasn't there, or so and so's trying a new character, so I beat them in tournament, but if it was his actual character or their actual character, I might not have gone that well. There's so much mental that goes on with these games that I had like anything else. If you had told me how deep fighting games go before I got into it, I might have been like, that's cool and all, but no thank you.
Right, or not believe you.
or not believed it. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, you guys are counting frames and all this.
You guys are just button mashing.
Yeah. But like, the journey is long, the depth of these games is long, and everyone that participates in all of these tournaments has a different background, different set of skills, comes from different places, has personality things that affect or mental things on how they learn and stuff like that. So it's actually quite beautiful how vast the community can be, and all of that is there for you to enjoy, basically.
So I wanted to go back to like we were talking about like how bad it feels to lose, and what I was saying was like when you're the person losing, it feels so terrible, and you also can like pile onto yourself thinking like, oh, like I feel so terrible. No, the person who beat me must think I suck, and anybody who saw that must think I'm not worthy of being here, or whatever the feeling is. But then you think about it, and you're like, oh, but when I beat someone else, I don't feel that way to them. And when I watch someone lose, I don't think they suck. So why should I feel like they're thinking that about me just because it's me? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not different. And so when you kind of put yourself in someone else's shoes, you kind of realize how it doesn't make sense. And same thing, like if you play someone and the set's really close and you win, you're not like, oh, this player sucks. You're like, man, I can't believe I won that. This player's really good. Even though they lost, it was close. Like they're good. Like you kind of earn the respect. And the same situation could happen where you're in a close set with a strong player and you lose, and like the negative thoughts creep in. You're like, oh, I suck. They're better than me. I'm never going to beat them. But meanwhile, they're thinking what I was just saying. They're thinking, man, that guy's good. Like, man, I better practice this week, or this guy's going to beat me next week.
I had to work hard for that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that being said, this past Monday when I played your brother in sets, I think we played like a first to 7, and I won 7-0. But some of the games were so incredibly close. Like, I think of the 7 games, I think he won like 5 or 6 rounds.
Yeah.
So there was only a few games where I won both rounds. And I think the first game in particular, and it could have been, I was still warming up because I just walked in and he was already warm because he was fighting someone else before I got there. But the first game was like his, and I think he like dropped a combo or burnt himself out when he shouldn't have. But it was like such a minor mistake, and I capitalized and won. But like he was winning that match, like he was beating me. And then the 6 games that followed were all close. And so like in my mind, like when he got up after that set, I had that thought in my head, like, man, he's getting so good. Like, I can't wait to see where he's at like 3-4 months from now. He has a really good shot of putting me in losers bracket. Maybe not today, but 3-4 months down the line, if he keeps up with it.
Absolutely. That's not anything that goes in his mind or the person that's losing. Because, and I've said this before too, where like, you have a close set and you're like, yeah, but it wasn't enough, so it still doesn't matter. Or if you look purely at numbers, right? Because and I know me and my brother are a lot alike. So whether he was close to beating you all these rounds or games, he's looking at the raw data. Yep. I got 7-0'd by Ricky, and I'm pissed about it. Let me ask you a question. When you're in tournament and throughout your tournament time, would you rather? What feels worse? Losing to someone and you got totally smoked, you almost don't even know what happened, or it was so close, it was neck and neck, it could have gone either way?
So I think in the beginning of my tournament journey, I think I would have said that losing for free was better and that losing a close set felt worse. And now I think it's the opposite. Now, if I lose a close set, it's like, shake the other guy's hand. I mean, as I always do, but like really like there's like the mutual respect was like, yeah, we're both near the same level. This is a local. I'm going to see you next week and the week after that and the week after that. And like, I'm excited that I have competition, excited to be like, well, if it was close and I lost this week, next week I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to try. I might lose again, but at least I'll do something different, and eventually I'll win. Then you'll beat me back. Like, that rivalry is so important for growth.
It is.
And so I get excited by that, even though it still sucks that you lost. I can appreciate the fact that it was like a quote unquote good loss. It was like, this was constructive. I'm going to do my homework, and within 1 to 4 weeks of practicing and trying again, I have a shot at beating them back. And so for me now, if I lose to someone and it's absolutely free, let's say Mena shows up to our local, shout outs to Mena. If he shows up to our local and he just quadruple perfects me or practically does, then that will feel worse, not just because I got beat really badly and I play this game all the time and I'm competitive and I really want to win and do well, but more so the thought that like, oh, I have so much to improve on. I don't even know where to start. And if I do my homework and I work really hard, 6 months from now, he might quadruple perfect me again. And so that perceived gap in skill can seem insurmountable. And I think that feels much worse now.
Because you've put all the time in.
Well, it's not so much that I've put all the time in. I think, if I could give this opinion to other players, like players who are new, like if they had the opinion I used to have, which was losing for free wasn't so bad because it was like ripping off a Band-Aid. Like it was quick, it was painless. I don't know what the hell happened there.
Yeah.
And then a close set being very emotional, very, nerve-wracking. And then losing at the end of it, it's like almost winning the lottery, right? It's like you're one number off, you're right there.
Yeah,
and it feels bad. And so if I could, impress onto those players that like, no, the close losses are the good ones, and the ones when you got blown out are the ones that they might have seemed painless, but that's only because you were like not absorbing it.
Yeah, because there's so much sometimes.
Yeah, and so I think if you have like a pretty new player and they lose, and this happens actually pretty often. So like if you seed a tournament properly, first round, the strongest players fight the weakest players, and then the players who are in the middle of the bracket, like middle skill, fight each other.
Yeah.
So round one, the players in the middle of skill level are going to have those close matches. But round one, the strongest player is going to destroy the weakest player. It's just the way the bracket goes. And so I think those losses are going to be the hardest to take when you're new.
That's seeding, in case you aren't aware. And if you're watching at home, toast why you get put up against Ricky almost all the time. That's just how seeding goes, right? The strong player is going to have to fight one of the weaker players, and vice versa, making the mid-carder that much more of a, a struggle to move past, right?
Yeah, and also, like, seeding is actually for good reason. Like, the most important thing with seeding is you don't want the strongest players fighting early. Because what can happen there is if let's say your first strongest player and your second strongest player fight each other, let's say round one, which would be the worst thing that could happen. One of them is going to go to loser's bracket. Let's just say, for the sake of the story, the number one seeded player wins and the number two seeded player loses. Well, at some point, the number one player and the number three player are going to fight each other on winner's side. It might even be winner's finals. So the number one player bumps the number three player down, and then if or even let's say it's the number four player, if the number four player fights the number two player in the loser side early, and let's just say the skill difference between 4 and 2 isn't that great, and the number 4 seeded player has a great day, and the number 2 seeded player makes 1 or 2 extra mistakes, that number 2 seeded player could be out of the tournament pretty early. When if you had seeded it, the first and second seeded players wouldn't have fought each other most likely until winners finals.
Yeah. We made that mistake one time. We had you and Clint, like I think round one, and everyone was like, that should be grand finals, because we were using challenge back then and we had to manually seed.
Right.
And maybe there were just some new players that week. I don't remember how it went. That was an issue that week.
Yeah. And also in your defense, that was my first time going to Button Club. So like,
oh, okay.
So I'm sure there were some players there, like yourself, who knew that I was good at Street Fighter. But yeah, I totally understand how that like got mistaken or whatever. But yeah, it was literally the number 1 and number 2 player who was there that week fought each other round one. Yep. I lost to Clint in that first set, and then I went to losers bracket immediately, and I had to fight through everyone to make it all the way back to Clint in grands. I had to reset in grands, and then I ended up beating him in the end, barely. It was every one of those sets with Clint that day was so incredibly close. When I talk about good losses, they were all like that. Because even when I lost to him round one, it was, he beat me 2-1. Like, it was close. And then I forget the exact scores, but I don't think there was any 3-0s. I think it might have been like a 3-2 reset and like a 3-1 or a 3-2 after the reset. It was very close games.
Going back to what you were saying earlier about like those good losses, 2 weeks ago, Moon had shown back up to Button Club, and I sent him to losers and eliminated him. And then this past week, he eliminated me. So he went to second place and I got third. And it was the opposite the week before. But our games were so close.
Yep.
And the mental that was going on in my seat anyway felt amazing. I almost couldn't believe that I was playing like this, and so was he. I think he baited a drive impact at one point because he did like the Fuha stock. Yep. Or parry, and he was ready for it and level 3'd me, and there was no way that I could be mad about that. I was actually like, oh my god, like this guy's playing so next level, and then to lose to him 3-2, I was still stoked. I was happy to have podiumed, and it was great to see that he had improved. And even before he left, I was like, so talk to me about this week compared to last. And basically was like, I just went home and watched the replay, saw what I was doing wrong or what you were getting away with, and just tried to apply it today. So that, if that is my newest rival, I am stoked to have him there and have someone at that level to play against and to learn from. That was actually super amazing.
Right. So to quickly recap, it was 2 weeks ago you beat him in a close set, and then this last week he beat you in a close set. And so now you're like excited for him to show back up. And like, that's what you're saying. Like, those were the good losses. Those are the close sets that you want.
Yeah. And I learned some of his patterns. I learned what he was baiting me to do and figuring out things in the moment, which is just so exciting when your brain's firing on all cylinders to be thinking of how can I outsmart them and what can I do here. And I was baiting a lot of throws out of him. Yep. I was tick throwing and shimmying and to punish him on that just felt so good. Yeah, and I've like, if he doesn't show up this Monday, I'm gonna be kind of bummed. Be like, oh, like where's Moon? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, like having, rivals like that at your weekly, at your locals. Doing the homework during the week so that when you show up the next week you're stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what fighting games is all about.
Yeah,
and it's like, especially like I'm sure the majority of fighting game players don't go to a local. Either they don't have a local, or it's far from them, or they don't have the money to go, or maybe there's one and they don't know about it. But like sitting at home and like grinding ranked or only doing Battle Hub, like if you don't have friends you can talk to, like friends that outside of the game, like that can be a pretty miserable experience.
Yeah.
Like fighting games are pretty bare bones as far as like things to do.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like if it wasn't for locals, I wouldn't play fighting games nearly as much as I do.
Mm-hmm. And we are in our 30s, and the older you get, the harder it can be to make friends, right? Or to get out there. And because of Platinum City Gaming and starting Button Club, I have like 20 to 30 new friends that I look forward to seeing every week, that I invite over to my house when we run living room locals. It's all centered around fighting games, but I've become friends with you, Classic even. Me and Classic have talked about being small business owners. I notice a lot of players don't really get into like relationship stuff. Right? Like none of that really gets talked about. Maybe that's just a guy thing. I'm not sure. But yeah, but if I had not gone out to locals and made myself vulnerable, I wouldn't have the friends that I have right now. I wouldn't have had the fun times. We wouldn't be going to Defend the North like we are this year.
Exactly.
And Temper, like it's so cool. And if you think you're going to stay home and learn on your own, you will only get so far, and you're completely missing out on information, friendship, matches, rivalries, good times, all of that.
Yeah, like even like very specific to the game, like you were saying, like you're going to be fighting Moon hopefully this coming Monday. Like you've done your homework, you hope that he has too.
Yeah.
Like you're both going to duke it out. And it's like, not only are you learning how to fight Moon better, you're learning how to fight players who do certain things that Moon is doing better, like players who delay tech on defense. You're learning to shimmy better. Mm-hmm. You're learning the jury matchup better.
Yep.
He's learning, the Guile matchup better, assuming you're still using Guile for that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, so like you learn these very specific things at a very deep level. So like if you fight Moon this way multiple times over the next couple of weeks, let's say you're home and you're grinding ranked. If you run into a master ranked jury, you have a pretty good shot of just mollywopping that player. Because they're not as good as Moons. They don't do this. They don't do this optimal combo. They get really nervous when I put them in the corner. My training buddy is way stronger than this. I'm ready.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good feeling. So real quickly, everyone has their bracket demon, the person that they struggle to beat for God knows how long, and it feels like you will never beat them.
And some people have more than one.
And some people have, oh yeah, absolutely. There's a tier list of your bracket demon, right?
Right. And just for reference too, like I would consider a bracket demon someone who you truly believe is better than you. Like if you're going back, like you and Moons are not bracket demons, I would say, because you are beating each other back and forth. I would say a bracket demon is someone who's like better than you, but not so much better than you that it's unfathomable to ever reach that level.
Yes, but for whatever reason, you just can't seem to beat them in a tournament setting. My first bracket demon that I was able to beat is Flying Raj and Bobby.
Oh, yeah? Tell me about that.
We would play, so this is during the Guilty Gear Strive days. We're all coming out of quarantine to start playing again, and I meet him, and he seems a little cocky, a little out there, but hey, we're all different personalities in how we handle social gatherings. So he beat me for months, like absolute months. And there was a point when same thing, like you would go outside, balance patch, right? I was like, we would play casuals or in tournament, and I would put the controller down. I was like, I'm going for a walk.
Yep.
I am going to go for a walk. I'm going to get this steam off. I can't believe that he beat me again. I can't believe that I let him get away with A, B, and C, or this is what he's doing, and I'm falling for it. Smoke out of my ears. Frustrated.
Yeah, red in the face.
Oh my God. And never wanting to really show that to him because I never wanted to be disrespectful to him.
Right.
Or even let someone know that they were getting to me in that way. Like that's not really great for a tournament setting either, you know? People realize they're in your head and then they start living there rent free. So we had played in casual. If my memory serves me correctly, we were playing in casuals and I beat him. He was May, I was Potemkin. It's a very lopsided matchup.
Yes,
okay.
It is.
And when I beat him in casuals, I had a little bit of a pop off, and it felt amazing. Went for that same walk.
I was gonna say that pop off probably felt well deserved.
Woo! Went for that same walk, but was with pride and a little bit of a strut now, you know.
Yeah.
And then when I actually beat him in tournament, I erupted like a demon. Like I was standing outside of my body watching myself, you know? I'm like, yes, let's go. I hit the stick, I pick it up, and I even Alicia's behind me, and I went like this, like Undertaker, like I just couldn't believe that I had beaten him, and it felt so amazing. I don't remember any other highlight from that night except I actually beat Bobby, and then much like anything else, we hugged it out. Nothing but love and respect, you know, like no disrespect on the pop off, but I hope you can appreciate.
Right. Keep it in the game, but that was awesome.
Yeah. And then even one time during Button Club, we were, Street Fighter 6 was still so new. And I know that we're always back and forth, frickin' frack. And it was me and him in grand finals. And I completely lamed him out. Like, I knew he wasn't anti-airing. I knew he wasn't doing all these. I looked like a shitty player because I was just jumping in, cross up, little jab, go cross up again. It looked absolutely stupid. When I beat him, same thing. I popped off. I felt so good because I wanted to establish, like, look, this is, you can have Guilty Gear, but this is my game. I want to be good in this game, you know? What were some bracket demons that you had overcome in your time?
There were so many. It's been a while.
It's been 10 years.
But honestly, to try to keep this kind of short, there was one bracket demon in particular that was for a very long time, and that's Super John.
Oh,
Without a doubt, he was the bracket demon because I would, I used to go to multiple locals. And so I'm trying to think back, like, I think I used to play him at the old PCG.
Mm-hmm.
I used to play him at 1UP Games. I used to play him at Havenshine. There's only a few times I think we were both at Balance Patch at the same time, and so that wasn't really like a weekly thing between us. But for the most part, it was PCG, 1UP Games, and Havenshine. And in the beginning, it was like I really felt like he was the best. I was like, oh man, like, if Daigo was here, he might beat Daigo. Like I was like,
this guy's untouchable.
I couldn't believe because I thought I was so good at the time. Like I was much better at that time than I was when I had started. I had come a long way in a short amount of time. I worked really hard, and so like I felt like I achieved a certain level. So for someone to beat me free was like, this person is the best. Mm-hmm. They must be top 10 in the world if they're this good.
Which he might say he is.
He might be. But in facing him week after week, and really, though, he was the bracket demon. So even though he was beating me consistently week after week, it really was like a rivalry. And so it wasn't me rivaling with him where every week we would beat each other back and forth. It was every week he would beat me, and I was trying to make it harder and harder for him to beat me. I was trying to get closer and closer. And like over the course of doing that, we actually became pretty good friends. And we would talk a lot, and we would play online from home together. And he taught me things about fighting games that I truly believe if he hadn't taught me them then, I might still not know them now.
Wow.
He taught me things that had nothing to do with the game we were playing. It was like the mental fortitude, things like breathing. He used to tell me all the time, breathe. I can hear you not breathing. I can feel that you're stressed. I'm sitting next to you.
Wow.
Things like you were saying when you fought with Bobby in that grand finals in Street Fighter, that you were doing scrubby stuff. You were jumping in, you were sweeping, like whatever you had to do to get the job done, right? And he would tell me stuff like that too. He's like, if it works, it is real. If you jump in 6 times and the ante you 5 times, you're winning. Like there's like, you know what I mean? Like you shouldn't feel like you have to play a certain way. It's like, do what you have to do to win. Like if jumping in a lot works, jump in a lot. Who cares how it looks? Right? Like if, throwing lots of fireballs stresses out your opponent, stress them out. Like make them feel uncomfortable trying to play the game. Like you don't have to wait for them to make a big mistake to get a big combo. You don't have to wait for them to whiff to get a whiff punish. It's like force mistakes. Press buttons with your minus. Like make them do the right thing at the right time. Put them in situations where the window for them to do the right thing is small. That way, if they do the right thing, good on them. But they got to do the right thing at the right time, consistently, multiple times to beat you. And he taught me so many things like that. And so, remembering to breathe, play in a way to stress out your opponent. Like, don't let the way your opponent's playing stress you out. Like, little things like that actually went a long way. And over the course of, it must have been over a year of just playing with him regularly and learning and getting better and just like consistently practicing, I slowly but surely actually caught up to his level. And we got to a point where the rivalry was nobody knew who was going to win, me or Super John. It was neck and neck every single week.
Yeah. That's what I remember is going to PCG and I knew when you were both in the room, it was going either way. And I had saw you guys play in grand finals so many times and it going both ways. And again, like you said, the discussion that would happen afterwards, you guys would do the same thing right then and there.
Yeah.
You talk about it and go, oh, why'd you press there? Why'd you do this and that? Oh, I made you do this. And
exactly.
What you were saying that he explained to you is one of the things that inspires me the most when I hear you talk about theory is because there's not much YouTube content out there that covers that.
Right.
How to stress out your opponent, what to do when you're stressed out. It's all execution and frame traps and literal in-game things. But the mental game, and I'm realizing that the more and more I play, is the biggest part of all this.
Yeah, if you can stress your opponent out and stay calm, you can likely beat them without doing any combos. I mean, maybe that's an exaggeration, but like you definitely don't need to do optimal combos. Especially in a game like Street Fighter 6, like if you're playing Ken and you throw your opponent in the corner 6 times, they're stressed.
Yeah. They're worried. And like and much like we were talking about in the beginning, that feeling that you have of being like, feeling inadequate, you are putting that on your opponent in the game and not outside of the game, right?
Right, exactly. You're doing things you're doing emotional damage.
Yes. When I had received coaching at one point from Chris T, okay? And of course, our replays were something that we had watched a lot of, right? And one of the first times he watched you and I play, he was like, oh, this guy's disrespectful.
Yep.
Oh, this guy just doesn't care. He is jumping in. Oh, I can't believe round start he jumped in. And for me, I was just like, well, that's just what he's doing. I didn't see it as disrespectful in any sort of way, but not that you are disrespectful at all, but it's the game, right? It's what you're trying to force your opponent to do.
Right. I'm trying to win. And if, jumping at 99 seconds is going to stress you out or force you to look for something and ignore something else, that's, things I can use to my advantage. I do it.
There's those war tactics.
And just to put it simply, like, if I jump in at 99 seconds, it's not my problem, it's your problem.
Yeah. That's this thing that really blows me away is the mental and how you're thinking, and hopefully that can all get passed down to me as time goes on, and keep those things in my head. I know that anytime someone does level 3 in round 2 and it's unnecessary, And Tom and I even have a joke back and forth when we hang out sometimes, like, oh, Ricky's somewhere. He's rolling his eyes. He doesn't know why, but he's like raising his eyebrows, level 3 in round 2, and you know this and that.
Yeah. So like that scenario happens pretty often. Like, and there's multiple ways to mess it up. Like, let's say, the other player wins round 1, and then to win round 2, you combo into level 3, but you got a perfect that round. That means, like, maybe in hindsight it was the right thing to do. But because you perfected them, or if you practically perfected them, that means you had enough health left to try to win without spending your level 3. Yep. And that could be extremely valuable, especially if during that round 2, let's say you perfect them with your level 3. If they have level 3 on deck, you messed up.
Yeah, exactly. And that's meter management and things that are going on. You're not playing round by round. Right? You're playing match by match, set by set. And how do I show them this card so that they forget about this and then show them the other card later on, right?
Right.
And so those are things that, and anytime someone gives me any type of information, I instantly am like, I need to prove to them that they didn't just waste their breath. I want them to know I am listening, I am receptive. That could lead to more information. And I want to make it a point for myself to hit that, like, you need to get this, basically. Like, this is your new priority because they gave you this information. Don't forget about it. Don't let it go by the wayside. Start working on it right now, basically.
Right. And even if you're not doing it or you're messing it up, at least you're trying to do it. And it could be something simple like, let's say you always end a combo with a certain move, right? Let's say you do a combo and a fireball. And someone lets you know, like, hey, like, you can end that combo with uppercut or tatsu, and either one is way better than ending in fireball. Because when you end in fireball, you just end up this far away from them, and it's not really your turn anymore.
But you might not be thinking of that, and then someone's like, "Oh, but you get better Oki if you do this." I'm like, "What the hell is Oki?"
Right. Or in Street Fighter 6 specifically, like, ending a combo in level 1 is pretty easy to do, but there's a really good reason not to do it very often, and that's because if you end a lot of combos in your level 1, you're probably not going to have your level 3.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And so let's say you win round 2, and in the middle of round 2 you do a level 1 super, and then you close it out with a level 1 super. You're basically going into round 3 with no super.
Yeah, with no real meter.
Right. It's similar to winning the round with your level 3. It's the level 1s seem like so I would say a level 1 ender is not expensive if it wins you the round. And that being said, is like, even if you're going to perfect your opponent, ending it with a level 1 if it kills is really not that expensive.
Especially if you're burnt out, like you have no other resources to spend to get that damage.
Yeah, but I would say even if you have all your drive meter, which, I mean, if you have all your drive meter, you probably could have killed without the level 1. But let's just say you had all your drive meter and it's round 2 and you combo into level 1 and it kills and you got the perfect. I would say because it was only level 1, it wasn't that expensive. It wasn't that big of an error. But if you're constantly, like, if your default combo ender is like, I'm going to end in level 1 unless I have no meter, and then I'll do like a OD attack or just like a heavy special move or whatever, then I would say, like, you're not using your resources very effectively. And a lot of what we're talking about, you might think to yourself, like, they're talking about the game and how to get better. Like, what does this have to do with going to your locals? I thought that's what this episode about. And so this a lot ties back to locals, because a lot of things we're talking about don't occur to you when you're playing ranked.
Yeah.
If you're playing a 1st to 2 with someone that you've never met before and you might never see them again, and you win round 2 with your level 3, and then they beat you round 3 with their level 3, and the game's over, you think, man, that character's stupid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not thinking about the issue.
Or they cheesed me out, or they only won by a little bit, so next time, right? But
Right. Or if you spend your level 3 round 2, but you're just a much better player than them, and you end up winning anyways, you're like, oh, I did everything right. I should do that all the time, right? You're learning bad habits, essentially. And when you go to your locals and you're fighting the same players week after week, assuming the skill level is high enough, they're not going to let you get away with that.
Yeah.
And so if you're losing to the same person consistently and you start to ask for advice, these are the types of things that they may point out to you, like, oh, you spend your level 1 too much, or like, oh, you popped your level 2 to win the round and now you don't have any meter into round 3. Or, you ended your combo with an OD attack and that burned you out. You literally just checkmated yourself.
Yeah.
And so again, these types of things are like things you need to learn to get better at the game. And they don't necessarily hold much weight if you're just playing ranked or if you're just playing Battle Hub. It really holds the weight when you're like, okay, I worked all week. I, basically spending my entire night doing this, right? I drive 30 minutes. I'm paying some amount of dollars. There's more on the line than just, 5 minutes or 10 minutes of playing
absolutely.
ranked. So you have all this build up to then, let's say you go 1-2. And let's say one of the players that beat you was just way better than you. There's nothing you're going to do that day to beat them. But the other player, it was close. And you're like, okay, what can I do to beat them next?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the real learning takes place. Because you don't think that deeply on a single loss, even if it was close, if it was in ranked.
Yeah. Or sometimes like when you're new, it's hard to remember everything that happened.
Yeah.
There were points in Guilty Gear where I would lose and I'd go to, my friend Saucy and I'd be frazzled and be like, well, what happened? What went wrong? I'm like, I don't even know. Especially in that game, everything's happening so fast. It's hard to see all these animations. So there'd be points where I'm like, I really don't know what happened. And I didn't have that eye yet to kind of see what was going on or to know why I lost and things like that, which is why it's super important to watch your replays.
If you can.
If you can. And especially if you're going to a local, thankfully at Button Club, we record every single tournament and we put it up on YouTube. And I'm sure a good half of the views that it gets is from people at Button Club who are doing it for their research. There's my brother struggled with that a little bit in the beginning too. He didn't want to watch his losses. And then when we would watch them together, he felt that shame twice.
Right, because he was watching it, which he didn't want to do, and then you were seeing it, and he didn't want you to see it.
And I'm like, Gui, I call him Gui. That's a name I have for him. Like, Gui, why did you do that? What are you doing over here? This and that. And I'm not saying it to make him feel bad or shame. It's just like I have to point this out, like that little bit of tough love. Like you need to see that this is wrong, and that really does stick with you to make sure you don't do that again.
Right.
Another thing I wanted to bring up is the difference between going to your local and online is there are online tactics sometimes that work. There's, sometimes there's a few frames of input delay that gets added because of the internet. So there was a point when I was going to Platinum City Gaming, losing all the time, and then thought to myself, maybe I need a break from this. Maybe I need to work on myself at home. So when I go back to PCG, I'm a better player. And then what ended up happening was I was getting falsified rewards from what would work online. And then I would go to the local and that stuff wouldn't fly. And then you're like, well, what's going on? How come this isn't working? And this is before I'm like really diving into frames and stuff. But so you need to get that offline experience. Plus, you're playing next to an actual person.
Yep, you can ask them questions.
The tension that's there sometimes, or you don't know this guy. Maybe you don't even like this guy. And you're like, I got to sit next to him. Like, he better not beat me this time or whatever. All those things really help you grow and mold yourself into what it takes to become a better, more experienced fighter, I would say.
Yeah, and going back to what we were talking about earlier in the episode about like what to expect at your locals and etiquette and whatnot, I would say it is good etiquette and it's polite to, like, if it's casuals, ask as many questions as you want anytime you want. In the middle of a round, in the middle of them comboing you, you can stop and ask them any question anytime, totally fine. During tournament, I would recommend don't ask any questions until the entire set is over.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? Like if they beat you round one, don't turn to them and say, what was that on block?
That's not going to happen.
You know what I mean? It's in the middle of competition. Like that would be like in a basketball game or some other sport analogy, right? Like you don't ask your opponents about their training regimen, right? Or what they what their diet is like. It's like maybe after the game is over.
Yeah.
Right? When the score is settled, then you can ask them whatever, right? You both have the same job if you're on different teams. But like during the game, during the competition, it's like, maybe I'm not saying this the right way, but it's like during the competition, they're not your friend. They can be your friend all the way up until the competition starts and the second it's over. But during the competition, and I'm not saying they're the enemy, I'm just saying they're your competition. You got to, respect that and take it seriously. Mm-hmm. And so it's really not good etiquette to ask questions during the set. It's also not good etiquette to like very verbally be like self-defeating.
Yes. Which we talked about that, I think, a little bit in one of our older episodes. But to be like, Toast and Ricky round one, and Toast like, oh, here we go, right to losers bracket, right? Like, saying that stuff out loud and putting your mental already in that negative place, it's just going to boost you up. It's going to make him look a certain way. And even though you're probably just like, I think you called it option selecting, right? To just be like,
right. It's like, see, I knew I was going to lose.
Yeah. You turned it into, you made it into fruition basically, right?
Yeah. And also like from my point of view, like as the player who is the one hearing them say that, like that doesn't make me feel good. Like I don't like, it is much more enjoyable to compete against someone who you feel like is competing at their best, whether they're, ready to beat you or have a close set or not. It's like, if they're taking it seriously, if they're playing their best, then there's that mutual respect. But the moment they start to say things like you were saying, or like, let's say I win game one and they'll say, or they'll their body language will change. They'll like push their stick and be like, God, I always drop that combo. Like, God, this anti-air sucks. It's like, please, like if you can, I know it's hard.
Yeah.
Wait till the set is over.
Mm-hmm.
Like during the set, like, treat it like it is a real competition. So treat it like it's a real competition.
Yeah. And have that that air of almost professionalism, right?
Exactly.
Even though it's a weekly and you showed up in your Crocs and sweatpants or whatever, but like have that air of professionalism and keeping it, tournaments very separate from casuals and everything else that's happening. And then, like you said, after the tournament match is over, or you've been eliminated, you can say, I think even like 2 weeks ago after you beat me in grand finals, I was like, any tips, anything that I could be doing differently, basically, because the tournament was over and I wanted that feedback. Yeah,
and that's perfect. That's perfectly good etiquette. Like I said, 2 seconds after the round is over, if you're ready for it, you can start asking questions. You can start asking for feedback and opinions. And as often the player who's given that feedback, it's like, I enjoy that. Like if you were respectful during the set, and then the moment the set's over or 10 minutes later or whenever you're ready for it, if you ask me for help, I'm more than willing to give it.
Yeah.
And that excites me because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna give them a shortcut to the answer that they've been looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully they're gonna go home and do their homework, and then next week they're gonna be stronger. And if they keep repeating that cycle, a few months from now, I'm gonna be really concerned that they're gonna put me in losers bracket.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing better than that.
What has I'll make this quick and then we'll go into this other portion here.
Sure.
And not that I want you to hype it up because it's Button Club and whatever, but what made you go, I think I'm going to give this place a try, and what has kept you coming back at Button Club?
So up until the pandemic, I had been going to a lot of weeklies. The first weekly I went to was Haven Shine, and I'd been going to that weekly from 2015 up till March 2020 or so.
Yeah,
was when stuff started shutting down.
Oh yeah.
So I remember being at Haven Shine. It must have been a week before the pandemic hit. Being at Haven Shine and people talking about it and being like, I don't know if we're going to be here next week.
Because of the pandemic, or
because of the pandemic, we were going to be forced to shut down. I had gone to Platinum City Gaming for weeklies for years. I'd been going to Balance Patch. There was a period where I went every Friday, even though it was an hour and a half drive. It was super exhausting. I struggled, and I went to that. I went to One Up Games for a while, and I'm probably forgetting. There's probably other locals I've gone to over the years, but those being the ones I went to the most.
Mm-hmm.
What was I talking about?
Why
I come back.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'd been gone to a lot of locals pre-pandemic, and it was actually not sustainable for me. I was leaving the house 3-4 nights a week just to play Street Fighter, and so when the pandemic hit, I was kind of forced to stay home, and I kind of had this recalibration of this reset and realizing, going to 3 to 4 weeklies a week is not good for me. Now there's such thing as too much of a good thing.
Yep.
And so when I also when the pandemic was deemed over, I was still being very cautious. I was still wearing my mask when nobody else was.
Yeah.
I was still trying to not go out if I didn't absolutely have to. So I was being really careful for much longer than most people had. And I was getting to the point where I was I think I'm going to stop wearing my mask to work every day, even though I was the only one in the office who was still wearing a mask. and I was talking to my wife about, I really miss playing Street Fighter with my friends. Like, I think I'm going to start going to weeklies again. And so I'm forgetting exactly the timeline of this. So it might have been I think it was like January 2023.
Okay.
And I decided to go back to Havenshine because that was like my original weekly. I think the pandemic, as it hurt most locals, hurt Havenshine as well.
Yeah, of course.
And so I had gone to my weekly, and there was not a lot of people there, and there's not a great way to put this, but the vibes were off.
Okay.
And so I think I went in the beginning of January, and I think I took a couple weeks off, and I think I went at the end of January, and I just wasn't feeling it. Like, I just didn't get that feeling like I needed to get back there as soon as I possibly could.
Okay, yeah.
And so I was kind of struggling because I was like, is that an issue with this local? Is that, have I changed? Has my love for the game changed? Like, what's going on here? And some other locals were either like not really doing it anymore, or they were doing it at such like a small number. Like, I forget exactly what was going on with PCG at the time. I can't remember if they were like not doing weeklies or if not enough people are showing up to run a tournament. But like, PCG wasn't really a thing. I don't think One Up Games is really doing Street Fighter at the time. And Balance Patch was just way too far.
Yeah.
So at the time I was feeling like, oh man, like Balance Patch might be the only local I can get to. And that's like an hour and a half drive on a Friday night. And I'm so tired. And I get home at like 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
And also when I do that, it's like, because it's on a Friday night and I'm so tired from working all week, and I drive so far, when I get there, I honestly feel like I'm playing like crap because I'm just so tired. And so I like to do all that and drive so far and not be able to do my best. Like, everything just felt off. And then I heard that you had started your weekly button club, which was in Fairhaven, which is close to New Bedford, my hometown. And I thought to myself, like, oh, like I moved from New Bedford to Rhode Island. Like, it's way too far. And then one day I decided to check, like, oh, like how far is it? And so I punched in the GPS, and it was like 40-minute drive. I was like, that's really not that bad, especially if I'm comparing my two options being 40 minutes to go to Fairhaven if there's no traffic, or like an hour and a half to 2 hours to go to Balance Patch on a Friday night. Exactly. So I think I was like really hungry to play fighting games again. I'm trying to remember the timing of this. It must have been shortly after 6 came out, right?
Yeah.
When I started going?
Because otherwise we were strictly running Guilty Gear. Because we had retained a lot of the same people from the Guilty Gear scene of Platinum City, and we were all just foaming at the mouth waiting for June to hit for Street Fighter 6.
Yeah, so it must have been around the time, shortly after Street Fighter 6 came out. It might have been a couple weeks after, once I felt like I had gotten my bearings with the new game. I really wanted to go to a local, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to check out Button Club today. And I went, and opposite of what I experienced at Havenshine, the vibes were perfect. The lighting was good. There was lots of setups. A lot of players I hadn't met before, which as I'm talking about it now, like, because I've been going every week, literally since I went that first time. Like, the players who are there, like, I feel like I've known them forever. So I have to remind myself, like, oh, I've only known them for like 6 or 7 months or however long it's been. But yeah, so there was like a bunch of new players I'd never met before and never played with before. There was, a handful of players that I'd played with in the past. And it just felt right. Like, there's not a great way to explain what that is, but like, it's like when you know.
It's a feeling.
You're right. Yeah. It's like when you finally find your character and everything clicks, you're like, I can't explain what it is, but that character wasn't it, and this one is it. Yeah. It's like Button Club is the place.
Nice.
That's my local.
Oh man, that makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. All we've ever tried to do was just, especially since we call it Button Club, I never wanted it to feel like just a tournament setting, but a unionship between so many different people. So, and I'm sure, and I hope that other people feel that way too. Speaking back to you being so nervous about going to Havenshine for your first time, Toast has told me stories about how nervous he was. Almost didn't even leave his car.
Oh, like he went and just stayed in the car?
And stayed in the car and was like, I'm so nervous to go in there. Like, what's it going to be like? Who are they going to be like? And how good am I? And for someone to be that nervous, but then to be with us almost every single week ever since then.
Oh, yeah, he's like family.
He is, and he's opened up. He's evolved as a person. He's changed. He's become so much more like, personable, and is able to speak out the way I imagine he would around, friends he's had for years and stuff like that. When going to a local for the first time, what is something that you should be bringing with you, and what are things that you should expect?
The number one thing to bring is bring your own controller. If you've never been to a local and never seen one, you don't know what to expect. Most locals, pretty much every local, does not have extra controllers. They don't have, PlayStation controllers that you can borrow. And also, if you have been going to your local for a while and you know the players, like you've become friends, then it's more socially acceptable to ask. Because at that point, you're not asking a fellow competitor. You're literally asking your friend that you know, like, hey, can I borrow your controller today? Or can I borrow it for this match or whatever? That's more okay. But if you're like new to a local and like you don't really know people, it's less acceptable to be like, hey, can I borrow your controller?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times people are nice enough to be like, yeah, sure. Like, I don't mind. But it does put them in an awkward spot where like they don't want to say no.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely bring your own controller. If you're able to reach out to the TO, which stands for Tournament Organizer, before you go to the event to figure out what consoles they use. So these days, most locals run on PlayStation 5s. So if you play on like a PS4 controller or a PS5 controller, or you play on like a fight stick that or a hitbox that works with PS4 but not PS5, then you're going to need a converter. And it's we could probably put a link to it in the description of this video.
The converter, the FGC from Brook, yeah.
Yeah. So it's the brand is Brook, and it's actually called the FGC converter because it's not just converting from PS5 to whatever controller you're using. It's actually specifically designed or specifically programmed to work with fighting games. And what that means is if you try to play a not fighting game with it, it hasn't been set up for that. It actually, like, it does a handshake with the game to be like, oh, you're playing Street Fighter 6. We're gonna, scramble your controls so that it lands at the right spots for this game in particular. And so there's actually like updates for the converter that you'll have to do once in a while to make that work. But so let's say you play on PS4 controller. That's a pretty common controller. And you're going to go to your local and the TO says, yeah, we run on PS5. You're going to need a PS5 converter, which is the FGC converter.
Yeah. That actually happened this past week. One of the guys who has the, he was playing Tekken, the Itoki arcade stick.
Yep.
He had brought his Brook FGC converter, but hadn't used it since he bought it like in June.
Oh, so it wasn't updated?
So it wasn't working properly. So he bought one of ours because we have bought several of these converters. We do try and bring as many extra controllers as possible. I bring an extra leverless, levered, and pad just in case.
Right, but that's not typical.
That's not
typical.
Should not
expect it from your local.
So yeah, once he borrowed it, his opponent was even getting misinput somehow with it. Like he'd press a button and it was working weird on his side or whatever. So but that's something that we do try and provide because I would love for someone to just have a great first time experience. Even the person that was friends with that player, he's like, oh, like, I didn't know you guys had converters. I brought my PS5 controller and I hate playing on this thing. I play on a Armoury 6-button pad. And had I known that you had these, I could have brought it and had my, my controller of choice already here. But that's definitely something to consider. And if you are playing on pad, I would also encourage you to bring the appropriate cable to plug in, to link it up, USB-C, micro USB, or whatever your controller takes. Make sure you bring that because otherwise you have no way of hooking up and linking that one up to the console.
Yep, and I can't speak too specifically on this next one because I'm not a pad player, but when you connect to a console like a PS4 or a PS5, when you disconnect your controller, there's a correct way to disconnect it so that if you press the PlayStation button like 5 minutes later, you don't accidentally interrupt someone else's tournament set.
That is huge. And that would also go under tournament etiquette or conduct, right?
Yeah.
If you've had it, especially like right after casuals, go through the Bluetooth settings, make sure it forgets all of that, controller information, because the last thing you want is, him and I to be in a set. You were here recently with your PS5. You forgot to plug it in before you press the PlayStation button on another setup, and now you're interrupting our set, and that just causes confusion. Who did this and that? And there's disqualification rules in tournament that go with accidentally pressing the PlayStation button on your own controller. That's why they all have lock switches, or accidentally pausing and things like that. It's different if it's happening during a super and you're used to training mode and restarting it, but in the heart of gameplay, you definitely don't want to be doing that. Go ahead, Ian.
So other things to bring: water bottles, at least one. Like if you're bringing like disposable water bottles like this, I would say bring like 2 or 3. Also bring a hoodie, because you never know what temperature it's going to be at your local.
Yeah.
So you're better off having it and not needing it than needing it and not having it.
Absolutely.
If it's too hot, you can take the hoodie off, but if it's cold and you're in a t-shirt, you're not going to play very well. Another thing similar to that, if you're able to get your hands on one, I have an electric hand warmer. It's like a chargeable one.
Oh.
And so I bring that with me, so that if it's been a while between my sets, I struggle with like a poor circulation. Like my hands get very cold.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
And so if I'm like at the venue and like, I've played some casuals and tournament starting, I don't have a match for a while, I'll turn on my little hand warmer and warm my hands up.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because the other thing for me too, it's like my hands get cold all the time, whether I'm playing or not. There's actually times where I'm playing and my hands are cold.
Yeah,
and like I'm sweating, like my body's sweating and my hands are freezing.
Still cold. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. And so for me, it's like I would much rather be like waiting for my next tournament set with my hands sweating on this hot electric, hand warmer, so that I'm more than ready for my tournament set versus trying to play with cold hands.
Yeah.
No, I can't get my super done fast enough.
You have to send me a link to that. I'd be interested in that too.
Yeah, they're relatively cheap. You can probably get them on Amazon for like $15-20. Definitely worth the money. So hoodie, hand warmer, water bottles.
Bring your money.
Bring cash if you can.
Yeah.
So at these tournaments, typically you'll pay a certain number of dollars for a venue fee. A lot of places charge $10, and then depending on what game you're entering for the tournament, they'll charge like $5 or $10 to enter the tournament. And so at the end of the tournament, they have to do a payout, and it's much easier on the TO if enough people pay in cash. They can give the tournament winnings out in cash the moment the tournament's over, and everyone's paid, everyone's happy, everything's good. If you have to pay with like Venmo or Cash App or whatever else you use, if enough players are doing that, then at the end of the tournament, the TO is going to have to pay them on Venmo or Cash App, and that's a pain. And like I don't really use those apps. Like I do everything in cash. And so it would be a real pain for you if so many people were paying digitally, and then I get like first or second place in the tournament, and you don't have enough cash to pay me in cash.
Or a Venmo set up, and we're like, I'll see you next week maybe or something,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. So it does get awkward. So if you can bring cash, that's best. If possible, bring ones.
Yeah.
TOs love ones.
Yeah. We give them crap about it once in a while. Like it's a side job with all the dollars.
Yeah. Because when I have them, I try to bring ones. It makes it easier
it's
for
appreciated.
You guys.
It really is.
Well, there's times where there's a payout where like third place is going to get $7, and if you have a 5 and a 1, it's like, do I give him $10 or do I give him 6?
Yeah.
Or do I give him 6 and say I'll owe you $1 for next week? It's like that's an awkward position too. So if you're able to bring ones, ones and 5s, is best for cash for your local. Make sure your cell phone's charged. I'm trying to think what else.
Yeah, maybe the cable for that too, if it's different.
Yeah, honestly, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Like bring the cable for your cell phone, so that doesn't die. Bring a good attitude.
I was gonna say that. Bring your A game and bring a good attitude for sure.
It's like, you want to take it seriously. It's a tournament. A lot of the players, try hard and they deserve that mutual respect, but it's also not Evo. It's also not, it's not Capcom Cup.
Yeah.
You are there to make friends. You are there to have fun. And what you'll find at most of these locals, it's like, there's players of all skill levels, but 99% of players are there for a good time. They're there to make friends.
Yeah.
It's a social situation first and a tournament second.
We all have jobs, families, real things going on in the background that maybe we don't speak about, and we're looking to go to this as a way to vent and get out and make new friends. So.
Right, or even distraction, right? If you hate your job and you're there, 5 days a week, 40 hours, but the 3 hours you spend at your local is like Christmas every week.
Absolutely,
then you can put up with that crappy job for a little bit longer.
I always find the irony in Button Club being on Mondays because most people hate Mondays, the first day back to work. And growing up, I would only look forward to Mondays because of Monday Night Wrestling. So I know that as right now, as an adult, I look forward to Monday Night Button Club to be with my friends. And I hope that everyone that shows up also feels the same.
So speaking of locals, I think we can move on. If you don't have a local or you don't know where your local is, there is a place that you can go. So if you don't mind switching over, UltraDavid is a FGC commentator, and he has, reached out to as many players as he could find and said, please let me know who you are, where you're from, where's your local, what's the name of your local, what days is it a weekly, all the information you can possibly get. And he compiled it into one document.
So if you can find him on Twitter. We're going to have all the links in the description, so there's no real need for you to go out searching for this, but we just wanted to show you that it was here. And here is that document that he is talking about.
Yep. So it might be a little bit small on your screen, but if you click the link in the description below, you can see it for yourself. So it has the name of the tournament. In the second column here, it's the country. So there's multiple countries. It starts with Argentina. It shows 2 of them. It shows, like maybe 15 or so for Australia. There's Austria. I don't even know some of these countries. Belarus. Bolivia, Brazil, Cambodia, Canada.
Look at, and they're all in alphabetical order, so it'll be easy to find what you're looking for.
Greece, Iceland, India, Indonesia,
Luxembourg.
Every country you can imagine.
This is a beautiful
Pakistan.
thing. I'm sure a lot of work went into here.
So if you live somewhere on Earth,
so on planet Earth,
there is likely a local within an hour drive of you. And if there isn't, I highly recommend starting your own. If the situation, if you're able to.
Yeah. As a quick side note, Button Club itself, I started running Soul Calibur 6 tournaments weekly out of my house for certain friends of mine.
Which, I'm glad you brought that up. I do not recommend starting a local in your house.
Well, these were all like
people
friends and friends of friends, so I was aware of who they were. But we made fun of that, and we were like, wow, can you imagine doing this? And I almost didn't even think we could, but here we are all this time later. May's going to make a year we've been doing Button Club. So.
That's it?
Yeah,
it feels like forever.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, so if you are interested in starting your own local, I won't get too deep into this video because we could probably do a whole nother video on that.
Yeah, a video series maybe.
But the best way I would recommend in trying to start a local is find, if you can, a local card shop or a local video game store, not your local GameStop. I mean a mom and pop shop, and go and talk to them and say hey, I'm really into Street Fighter or Tekken 8 or whatever game you like to play, and say, could I come down one day a week? Assuming they have tables and chairs. And that's why I recommended the card games, places who run Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments and Magic the Gathering tournaments. They're going to have tables and chairs. They're going to have some space for you. If you're able to come down with, 2 monitors and 2 consoles, and they can promote it on their social media, and you can tweet it out to the 10 followers that you have.
Yeah, that's a start.
And even if it's you, your buddy, and one random person who either heard about it and went to the card shop for it, or they didn't hear about it and they just happened to be in the card shop, that's how you get it started.
Yeah, man. Takes 2 people to make a community, right? As we've said.
Yeah, and there's plenty of locals I've gone to over the years where they would send a message out to the players hey, we have 2 setups and we're expecting 20 people. If you can bring a monitor, if you can bring a console, if you can bring a copy of the game, whatever you can do to help us with the infrastructure, we'll give you free venue fee, or we'll give you $1 off this, or
incentives.
Whatever that they can do, because a lot of times the TOs are just like you, they just want to play fighting games with their friends, and they don't have a ton of money, they don't have all these resources. They can't go out and buy 10 PS5s, just to try to start something.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
start small. You bring your PS5, your buddy brings his PS5. And then if you can get 1 or 2 players that are also going to be going to bring their setups. 4 setups is, interestingly enough, 4 is more than twice as 2.
Yeah. and
4 is like 10 times as many as 2.
And like that, and Button Club itself runs on 4 PlayStation 5s, 4 monitors, and then whatever Tomato does. So and
whatever he brings.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so a little can go a long way. And so if you check out this list of FGC locals that UltraDavid had tweeted out, and there's no local near you, or there is one, but it's 2 hours away, or whatever the issue is, it's Monday night and you work second shift and it's just not going to work for you, then I recommend trying, if you really want this, try to start your run.
Yeah, I'm sure there are some locals that aren't even listed here that exist in the world too. So
That's
give it
true,
also
too.
a quick Google search and other social media formats, maybe even Twitter or Facebook. That's how I found Ricky. Actually, I want to see if Connecticut was on here.
Yeah, so if we scroll up to see, I'm sure there is.
Yeah,
oh my God,
yeah,
there's like 12.
absolutely. And I remember a time where they were like, "There's really nothing in Connecticut."
Right, yeah, just because they didn't know about it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Cool. All right, guys. Wrap up the video.
Sure.
All right. We'll edit all that. All right, guys. That's going to do it for this episode of the Safe Sets podcast. I hope you have found it entertaining and informative. If you have, please hit the like button, subscribe for more content like this, comment down below about your first local experience and where you go, where you're from. Share this with friends so that they can get the information that you received. I blanked out right there.
I'm going to take it. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and stay safe. If you've been to locals and you can ask for next, that also means you can ask for next on any setup. It doesn't matter who's playing.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
I mean, if Mena is playing Knuckle Do at your locals, you can ask for next.